Thank you to the three people who responded. So, consider that we don't listen. We think we do. But most of the time we're too busy listening to what Amit mentioned. The little commentary in our head that's passing comments on what you're looking at and what you're listening to. So, for example, when I came on the stage, how many of you had this fleeting little voice in your head saying, why is he dressed like that? Be honest. Okay, good. How many of you started thinking about my political affiliation? Oh, very good, okay. That was more instantaneous, huh? Brilliant. So most of the time, we are too busy wrestling with the, do I agree, do I disagree? And slowly over time, to deal with that powerfully, we develop narratives and strong suits that give us the ability to survive in our relationships. Now, I teach at a university, and I've done a lot of work in schools as well. And back in 2011, 2012, I used to teach at a university of architecture in Gurgaon. And I don't know if you've come across people who, have you come across people who essentially just know, like, when you start saying something to them about some fact that you want them to, you want to share with them, their first reaction is, हाँ मुझे पता है. I know, don't teach me. How many of you come across people like that? Wow, okay. How many of you are like that? Wow, okay, thank you for being honest. I didn't expect that. Alright. Now imagine if a teacher was like that. And it really hit me. I was working with one of my coaches, and he asked me, what kind of a class would you love to have? And I said, look, I would love to have a class which is excited, which is interested, which asks questions that are not pertaining to the subject that I'm teaching. And his counter question to me was, are you like that? And I said, no. The person who walks into the class is, I know, don't teach me, I'm here to teach you. Now it hit me. And I remember walking into class the next day and standing there in front of my students saying, guys, I've been lying to you. I've been telling you that I know everything that there is to know about this subject. But the fact of the matter is I don't. The fact of the matter is that you, all of you sitting here right now, have way more combined knowledge than my 18 years of experience in sustainability. And I promise you, from this moment forth, your experience in class is going to alter. I promise you that I'm on a learning journey with you. And from this moment on, my mantra is going to be, I don't know. Let's find out. That was in 2012. And what I'm going to share with you today has been things that I have learned from my students from the day that I said, you know what, I don't know. Let's find out. So how many of you know what 1 kilogram of CO2 looks like? This is a very interesting question to start with because the whole world is speaking about CO2. And I train people in the central government, I train people at states, professional bodies. And one of my students asked me this question in class. I said, Gaurav, listen, what does a kg of CO2 look like? We're talking about tons of CO2. What does a kg of CO2 look like? So, any of you, just for reference sake, that outline that is sitting in front of you is a cube. It's 1 meter by 1 meter and it's 58 centimeters high. That's what 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide looks like at roughly 40 degrees Celsius. If you bring the temperature down to where we are right now, that 58 would come down to 55, that's about it. Pretty huge, huh? For a kg of carbon dioxide. Now the next question my students asked me was, what about architecture? Like, is it architecture has a massive impact, right, on the environment? I said, yes, it does. But we've got some very good targets to meet. By 2030, UK has laid targets and the US has laid targets. So my students were like, but are those targets good enough? I said, I don't know. Let's find out. So I called up a friend of mine, Anshul Gupta. He lives in a beautiful house in Noida. We were the sustainability consultants for that house. It was designed by a dear friend of mine, Abhishek Binj, who's got an office right here in Gurgaon. Great architect. His father built this amazing place. And let me just show you the plans in brief. This is what the building looks like. That's what the plans look like. I doubt if you can read plans. But it's 557 square meters. Now, you'd be like, how much is that? That's roughly this entire open area in front of you. And include about 4 or 5 rows. Does that paint a picture? Yeah. Yeah? From this edge to that edge and stay till about the 4th row. Would be about 500 square meters. Yeah? This is built over 2.5 floors. So you'll have to kind of divide it and put one floor on top of the other. Lots of natural light, lots of natural ventilation. Beautiful place to live in, right? So we said, okay, let's examine this. That's the house. And we've eliminated concrete from the house. We've done things in lightweight material. Like I said, the natural light and ventilation is lovely. It's a beautiful property. And we did 3 scenarios. We did the business as usual case, which is how people are building today. Yeah? And we did a green building case. How many of you are aware that Pathways is a green building? It's a LEED certified building. Right? Now that's a green building. Okay? And then there was the low global warming potential case inside of what Mr. Dheer had mentioned. If we stopped listening to the little voice in our head, we could discover that the key to powerful actions to protect the climate doesn't lie with the educated world. It lies with the villages and with the tribals. So the low global warming potential was the case that my students developed with an ultra low mud building. And this is Soria, Tilak, Ayushi, Hardeep. Props to those guys are the guys who put this work together. So we came up with this answer. And we realized that if you build the building typically, you get the tallest bar. That means for every square meter that you build, it's 608 kg CO2. So you can imagine this multiplied 608 times going up into the sky. That's the amount of carbon dioxide that has already gone into the atmosphere before the guys have even moved into the building. So we were like, okay, what's the green building case then? Because this is a green rated building. I was like, I don't know, let's do the maths. So we did the calculations and we came up with 328, which by the way is amongst the globe's best. So this multiplied 328 times going up into the sky. And then the best case scenario was 1, 4, 3. Now, do these numbers make any sense to you? No, be proud. Because that's what the students said. They said, what does this mean? I said, I have no idea. Let's find out. Now, how do you figure out how much is that much carbon dioxide? So we did the next action. Right? We said, okay, let's try and figure out how much carbon dioxide can a tree absorb in a year. And let's look at a large canopy tree. You understand large canopy trees, like neem, burger, people, the big ones, jamun, right? And we figured out, and you guys can Google this when you go home, that a tree can absorb on an average 22 kgs of carbon dioxide in a year. How much? 22. Just checking that you guys are listening. Alright. So if that's the building that we built, in the best case scenario, that's the amount of green cover that we would need to absorb the carbon dioxide that was emitted from the best case building. Now, do these two squares make much sense to you? Yeah. They do? Okay, that's surprising. My students are like, this still doesn't make sense to us. So let me make it easy for you. You make that building 557 square meters. You need 2.65 times the entire Pathways campus covered with trees to absorb the kind of carbon dioxide in the best case scenario. The Pathways campus, just to let you know, is 34 acres of land. In the middle scenario, which is the current scenario, which is the actual green rated scenario, if that was the building, you would need this much land to absorb the carbon dioxide. We couldn't figure out what is this. The world keeps speaking about carbon dioxide. But at the end of the day, the thing that I want to know is that carbon dioxide going to get absorbed by something or not? Will there be a sequestration potential or not? And what do I need to basically offset that? Right? So offset study, real world scenario, 6.56 times the Pathways campus. 34 acres into 6.56 times. Now, I realize that some of you guys are sitting with notebooks. How many of you have notebooks and pencils? Okay, I'm going to give you a very quick calculation to do, okay? Wait for it. The way we are building today, if we build 557 square meters, that's the amount of area you need to absorb the carbon dioxide. And this is, remember what I told you, this is carbon dioxide before you moved into the building. So, yeah, this is a new building. 12.12 times the size of the Pathways campus. So here's a quick calculation for you guys, and I'm not going to stop here. You guys do the calculation, and whoever can shout out the answer first, that's great. India apparently builds 27,800 square meters of commercial area every day. Every day. So I want you to tell me, under all three scenarios, 27,800 into what you saw earlier on the slide, roughly 600, roughly 143, and roughly 300 kgs per square meter. So if you are building 27,800 square meters, I want you to do the math and tell me 27,800 into 600, 27,800 into 300, and 27,800 into 143. What's the answer? Keep the answer ready. Now the real question. So UK set targets, right? UK has something called the RIBA targets, the Royal Institute of British Architects, right? And they have a target that domestic buildings, that means residential buildings, should have a carbon emission, embodied carbon emission, that means embodied, embodied energy, right? The amount of energy that's consumed to make an item, yeah? By 2030, the UK aspires to reach 625 kgs carbon dioxide emission per square meter of built up area. And India over here, we're going and telling the whole world that every 10 years, we're going to be building the same amount of area as the whole of the United Kingdom. I don't think we know what we're talking about. So here's a little animation that one of my students made, because again, we didn't quite understand. There's this professor from Jadavpur University, Professor Sucheta Bardhan. She's done this amazing work on how much water goes into construction, and we realized that it's 27 cubic meters. So if you take this cube, this square, and extrude it 27 meters high, that's the amount of water that goes into building a building before the building is built. Okay, like just before you move into the building. So embodied water, yeah? So let's hope this animation works. Yeah? So that's the amount of water, and that's the amount of carbon dioxide, that's the 2030 target. And that's Laura. Laura is the little model that was standing over there. Her name is Laura. Are you clear here? That's the 2030 target, guys. How did we get here? How did we get here? My conjecture is that school gives us enough education. School gives us everything that we need to learn. I know a lot of people today who are trying to modify school curricula. I don't think that's required. And a lot of you guys are studying IB. I was a different curriculum altogether. Yeah. What school doesn't give us, and you guys I think are privy to that, is how to use the learning that we get in school. All the calculations that we did for volume of carbon was ideal gas equation. And the rest of it was simple arithmetic. Joining the dots. How do we use the knowledge that we get to battle climate change? Because quite frankly, if I look at education, and if you look at Amit's talk, it was amazing. If you were listening carefully to what Amit was saying, he was speaking about how school education and university education and life slowly and slowly drills deep into us this amazing, inexplicable sense of individuality. The fact that you have to find your own strengths. The fact that you have to find what you're good at. The fact that you have to get ahead in life by relying on your strengths and efforts, and no one else is going to do this for you. Have you heard your parents say this to you?
Yes.
It's a lie. Because guess who's going to breathe all that carbon dioxide? It doesn't matter if you've gone ahead in life. You're breathing that. It doesn't matter if you've struck gold. You're breathing that. We are in it together. We are in it together. So I do a lot of work with schools, like I was saying, and when the innocence of childhood is absolutely uncorruptible, then you start doing this whole, I know the answer and please pick on me and then I'm the good boy in class, and teachers have so much power, the ability to validate students, and that's how the whole sense of winning goes into you guys. But what is important is that we've done this exercise in so many schools where we've asked students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And normally we do this exercise on 2 boards. Yeah? So they give us all these answers and we just fill up the board. Yeah? We take about a 5-minute break. And then we come back to the question and ask the students, what do you need for a sustainable planet? And they give us all these answers and we write them down on the board. And we've done this, guys, in the best schools in the country. What do you notice in the 2 slides? They don't match. There's no connection between the 2. It takes 2 minutes for the students to realize that 625 ain't going nowhere. We need to be on a path of degrowth, ladies and gentlemen. We need to be on a path of a satisfaction economy. And I'm putting the words of my friend Karanveer Singh, who came up with the idea of satisfaction economy. We need to come up with ideas that go way beyond the efforts that we are making today. So if I was to leave you with a message, I would say 3 things that we need to kill. Kill. I'm using an extreme word, kill. We need to kill these 3 things from our lives. From competition, comparison, and class. And if there's 3 things that we want to take on through education, because guess what? We're in it together. Thank you. So what was the answer? TED Talk over. किसने कैलकुलेट किया?
Acres of trees, 412.08 acres of land. And then
It is 1 crore 66 lakh 80,000 kgs of carbon dioxide.
Super. So there's one thing that I missed out on, which I want to put into perspective. Laura के साथ वो जो पोल गया था ना ऊपर, that went up to a height of 366 meters. And the tallest building in Delhi, NCR, is the Supernova building in Noida, which stops at 300 meters.